The Imperium survives on one truth. The Emperor lives and protects mankind. But I found proof he's been dead for thousands of years. His soul dispersed into the warp long ago. When I revealed this, worlds burned and faith collapsed overnight. Now we face the question no one was prepared to answer. What happens when humanity discovers its God is gone? I was there when the truth broke the Imperium. When the golden lie that had sustained humanity for 10 millennia shattered like glass beneath the weight of undeniable revelation. My name is Inquisitor Odin Vale of the Ordo Hereticus, and I am the man who killed hope. The irony is not lost on me. I pursued truth my entire life. I hunted heretics who twisted imperial doctrine. I purged cults who whispered of false gods. I burned worlds to contain corruption. All in service to what I believed was the divine will of the God Emperor of mankind. And yet, it was I who would ultimately prove there was no God watching over us at all. The first signs came during a routine psychic interrogation. A captured navigator from House Belisarius. The navigator, a woman named Era, had been found transmitting coded messages to a known heretical faction in the Segmentum Solar. During the mind scrape, our sanctioned psychier reported unusual interference. A pattern within the warp itself. It seemed to emanate not from the navigator, but from terror. I dismissed it at first. A defensive mechanism. A psychic trap laid by a trained mind. But when 3 more interrogations revealed the same pattern, I knew something was wrong. Each prisoner, regardless of their crime or origin, carried the same psychic imprint. A pattern that pointed toward holy terror. Toward the golden throne itself. I remember the cold dread that filled me. I told myself it was impossible. I was pursuing shadows. This investigation would prove nothing but my own paranoia. How wrong I was. I requisitioned a ship. An old dictator-class cruiser called the Undaunted Truth. The name would prove prophetic. With a small retinue of trusted acolytes, I charted a course for terror. I used my inquisitorial authority to bypass the usual century-long waiting lists for planetary approach. Even for the Inquisition, reaching terror is not a simple matter. The defenses are the most formidable in the galaxy. Layers upon layers of battle fleets, orbital platforms, and psychic wards. 3 days into our journey, my most trusted acolyte, Marithor Kane, came to my quarters. He had served with me for 22 years. A former Arbites officer. His face was drawn. His augmetic eye whirred as it adjusted to the dim light. "My lord," he said, his voice low. "I must ask about the nature of our investigation." The crew whispers. They say we pursue evidence against the Emperor himself. I regarded him carefully. Kane had never questioned me before. "We pursue the truth, Kane. Nothing more, nothing less. It is our sacred duty as servants of the throne." His organic eye narrowed. The augmetic one remained fixed. "And if that truth is dangerous?" "All truth is dangerous," I replied. "That is why it must be controlled. That is why the Inquisition exists." He seemed unsatisfied, but nodded and withdrew. I should have recognized the warning signs. I should have seen that even my closest allies might falter. But I was consumed by the need to know. It took us 3 months to reach the Sol system. The pattern had grown stronger. Our astropath, Malia, began to suffer nosebleeds and seizures as we approached. She said it was like hearing a scream that had been stretched across 10,000 years. Only now beginning to fade into silence. I found her one night in the ship's small chapel. Not praying. Just sitting, staring at the gilded Aquila on the wall. Her pale, clouded eyes turned toward me. "You should not proceed with this, Inquisitor," she said without preamble. "Some truths are not meant to be known. Some doors are not meant to be opened." "That is not for us to decide," I replied, sitting beside her. "If there is a flaw in the Astronomicon, if there is something wrong with the Emperor's psychic beacon, it is our duty to discover it." She laughed. A sound so rare it startled me. "A flaw? Is that what you believe we are sensing?" "No, my lord. Not a flaw. An absence. A void where once there was presence." Her words chilled me. "What do you mean, Malia?" She turned those blind eyes toward me. I could feel her looking into me. I mean that what we are sensing is not the Emperor's presence changing or weakening. We are sensing the space where his presence once was, but now is not. Like a footprint in sand, slowly being erased by the tide. I still believed, even then. I told myself we were detecting some new manifestation of the Emperor's power. A reaction to a surge in chaos activity. A sign of his divine will expressing itself in a new way. I was desperate to believe anything but the truth. Upon reaching Terror, I invoked special dispensation to approach the Imperial Palace. This took weeks of bureaucratic maneuvering, calling in favors from Cardinal Hexus and Lord Inquisitor Vaughn. During this time, I housed my retinue in one of the countless orbital stations. These stations were cities in themselves, home to millions who would live and die without ever setting foot on humanity's birthplace. It was on one such station, Sentinel Primus, that we encountered the first signs of the unrest that would later consume the Imperium. A minor cult had taken root among the maintenance workers. They spread the heretical belief that the Emperor's light was fading, that his power was waning, that humanity should prepare for a new age of darkness. Normally, I would have purged the cult without hesitation. But something stayed my hand. Their beliefs echoed the pattern we had detected. They spoke of dreams. They saw the golden throne empty. They heard whispers telling them their god was gone. I had one of the cult leaders brought to me. A woman named Sir, a former mid-level administrator. She showed no fear. Only a strange, serene acceptance. "You already know it is true, Inquisitor," she said before I could speak. "That is why you have come to Terror. That is why you have not yet executed me. You sense it too. The absence where he once was. How long have you been spreading these lies?" I demanded. "They are not lies," she replied calmly. "The knowledge came to each of us separately. In dreams and quiet moments. We found each other afterward. And what exactly is this revelation?" I asked, my hand on the hilt of my power sword. Her eyes met mine without wavering. That the Emperor, beloved by all, is no longer present on the golden throne. That his spirit has departed, leaving only his physical form behind. That the light of the Astronomicon is maintained not by his divine will, but by the sacrifice of thousands of souls. Her words were high heresy, yet they aligned with our investigation. I had her detained but not executed. A decision I would later regret. Eventually, we were granted permission to establish a listening post in one of the lower spires of the Sanctum Imperialis. Still miles from the Golden Throne, but closer than most would ever come. The journey took us through layers of security. Retinal scans, gene tests, psychic probes, interrogation under truth serums, examination by tech priests. At each checkpoint, I presented my rosette and submitted to their tests. By the time we reached our destination, even Cain was showing signs of strain. "This place feels wrong, my lord," he whispered. "Not sacred, as I always imagined. Just wrong." I knew what he meant. There was a heaviness to the air. A sense of decay beneath the grandeur. A hollowness. Our chamber was Spartan, equipped with cogitators and psychic focusing equipment. It had been hastily repurposed. Data slates and components were stacked in corners. A layer of dust-covered surfaces that should have been immaculate. It was there, in that forgotten corner, that we began to unravel the truth. Our astropath linked with the equipment. For the first time we could isolate the pattern. The process was agonizing for Malia. Her body convulsed. Blood streamed from her nose and ears. She screamed. "The Emperor," she gasped. "I see him, but he is not there. I see the golden throne, but it is empty. I see the light, but it is not his light. It burns. Oh, throne, how it burns." Her words became incoherent, but the data was crystal clear. What we found defied everything I had been taught. The pattern was not a communication, not a command or a blessing. It was an absence, a void. A negative space where something massive had once existed but now was gone. Imagine a great stone dropped into a still pond. The stone vanishes, but the ripples reveal its passage. What we detected were the ripples of the Emperor's soul passing into the warp. Not recently. Not suddenly. Slowly, gradually, over thousands of years. Until almost nothing remained. I refused to accept it. I had the equipment rebuilt. I brought in more astropaths. I accessed ancient monitoring stations. The data was conclusive. The psychic presence that was the Emperor of mankind had been dissipating for thousands of years. What remained on the golden throne was little more than an empty vessel. A corpse around which the greatest lie in human history had been built. The Emperor was dead. Perhaps had been truly dead since the confrontation with Horus. The Astronomicon was not powered by his divine will, but by the sacrifice of thousands of psychers every day. Their souls burned like fuel to maintain the illusion. During those dark days, I saw my retinue fracture. Cain remained loyal. His face grim but his resolve unshaken. If this is the truth, he said, then it changes nothing about our duty. We serve humanity, with or without a god to guide us. But others were not so steadfast. My second acolyte, Don Reth, a former scholar of the Adeptus Mechanicus, approached me with trembling hands. This cannot be, my lord. The Omnisia cannot be gone. The machine god and the Emperor are one. If one is empty, what does that mean for the other? I had no answer for him. I should have destroyed the evidence. I should have executed my retinue and then myself. That would have been the merciful thing. But I was an inquisitor. I had sworn to uncover the truth, no matter how terrible. And in my pride, my shock, my need to prove my discovery was real, I did the unforgivable. I transmitted the evidence to a conclave of inquisitors. I expected debate. I expected denial. I did not expect my transmission to be intercepted. I do not know who accessed our data first. A tech priest. A rogue element within the Inquisition. All I know is that within hours, the information began to spread. First as a whisper, then as a flood. We were in our quarters when the first reports reached us. Civilian unrest in the habitation zones nearest the palace. Arbite's units mobilizing to contain a mass outbreak of hysteria. Cain entered without knocking, his face pale. My lord, we need to leave. Now. He held out a data slate. Footage showed crowds surging through the streets of a hive city. The audio was distorted, but the mood was violent panic. What are they saying? I asked, though I already knew. Cain swallowed hard. They are saying the Emperor is dead, my lord. They are saying the throne is empty. The effect was immediate. Catastrophic. Faith is the foundation of the Imperium. When that faith was undermined, the consequences were more devastating than any external enemy could achieve. We barely made it back to our ship. The corridors of the palace had descended into chaos. Guards abandoned their posts. Civilians formed frantic mobs. I saw a cardinal torn apart by his own bodyguards. I saw tech priests smashing sacred cogitators. I saw things that should not have been possible in the heart of humanity's empire. We reached our ship to find Malia and 2 other astropaths dead in the shuttle bay. Their bodies were contorted. Their faces frozen in terror. Their psychic hoods were shattered. The backlash, Reth whispered, his face ashen. The psychic shock of millions of minds gripped by the same terrible realization. They felt it all at once. It would have been like a psychic bomb. I watched from orbit as the first riots broke out across Terror. The Adeptus Arbites were quickly overwhelmed. When the Ecclesiarch dismissed the evidence as heresy, his words carried no weight. The very source of their authority had been proven false. Within days, the unrest had spread to nearby systems. The Astronomicon began to flicker. The psychers who maintained it lost their will to sacrifice themselves for a corpse. Warp travel became dangerous. Systems were isolated just when they needed unity most. From orbit, we saw waves of violence spread across Terror's surface like a disease. Entire hive cities burned. Orbital defense platforms went dark. Imperial Navy ships broke formation. Some protected civilian vessels. Others turned on former comrades. I received a transmission from Lord Inquisitor Vaughn. His face was haggard. What have you done, Vale? In the Emperor's name, what have you done? The irony of his invocation was not lost on me. I discovered the truth, my lord. As was my duty. His laugh was bitter. Your duty was to protect the Imperium, not destroy it. Do you have any idea what is happening? The Adeptus Custodes have sealed the inner sanctum. They are executing anyone who approaches. The Adeptus Mechanicus has declared the Omnicia dead. Half the planetary defense grid is offline. Chaos cults are emerging in every hive city. I had no response. If you have any loyalty left to humanity, Vale, you will help contain this. Find a way to counter the evidence. Claim it was falsified. Claim it was a test of faith. Claim anything. But it was too late. The evidence was irrefutable. It spread too far, too fast. The Imperium's own communication networks had become the vectors of their undoing. The Adeptus Mechanicus was the first major organization to fracture. Many tech priests had viewed the Emperor as the Omnicia. With proof that he was gone, their faith collapsed. Some maintained the corpse was still sacred. Others declared it time to transcend biological divinity. Wars erupted across Forge worlds. On the third day, we received a transmission from Mars. The surface was aflame. A tech priest appeared on the view screen, his face mostly replaced with augmetics. The Omnicia is dead, he intoned. The union of flesh and machine has failed. We must become as gods ourselves. Mars calls upon all true servants to cast aside the shackles of the Imperium. The transmission cut off. Replaced by another. A tech priest with more subdued augmetics. This is Archmagos Delphan Grus. Disregard all transmissions from the heretic Kelbier Hal. The physical form of the Omnicia remains upon the golden throne. Though his consciousness may have evolved, his sacred vessel must be preserved. Mars remains loyal to terror. Defend the sacred forges against the transcendent heresy. The Space Marine chapters reacted in varied ways. The Imperial Fists and Ultramarines declared they served the Imperium itself, not the Emperor's divinity. Others fell into despair or rage. The Blood Angels suffered a mass onset of the Black Rage. The Space Wolves withdrew to Fenris. We intercepted a Vox transmission. The Master of the Imperial Fists, Chapter Master Vornhagen, spoke with a representative of the Adeptus Custodes. The Imperial Fists stand ready to defend the palace. Hagen's voice was firm. Your service is not required, Chapter Master. The custodian's reply was cold. The palace is the domain of the custodian guard. With respect, Shield Captain, the situation is deteriorating. The outer precincts are under attack. My chapter can establish a defensive perimeter. The Emperor's physical form remains on the Golden Throne. So long as that is the case, we will fulfill our duty. If the Astartes wish to prove their loyalty, they will maintain order in the wider Imperium. The transmission ended. Most devastating was the reaction among the Imperial Guard and Navy. Entire regiments and battle groups declared independence. Others turned to new faiths. The command structure collapsed. Without the unifying symbol of the Emperor, local commanders seized power for themselves. A report came from the Cadian Gate. The forces holding back chaos were divided against themselves. General Murus Odin declared his forces loyal to the Imperium of Man, not the corpse on terror. Lord Castellan Ursarker E. Creed ordered his execution for heresy. The resulting conflict weakened the defenses. Chaos forces, sensing disruption, launched new offensives. I watched it all from the observation deck. The ship's captain, a grim man named Horst, asked me our course. What does one do after unintentionally committing the greatest act of heresy imaginable? I said, where does one go when the center of the universe has been proven hollow? The crew is asking questions, my lord, Horst said, his voice neutral. They want to know if it is true. What would you have me tell them, Captain? A comforting lie or the devastating truth? He considered this. I have served the Imperium all my life. I have never questioned its teachings. But I have always believed that what I served was humanity itself. If the Emperor is gone, humanity remains. It still needs protection. Perhaps now more than ever. His words struck a chord. Yes, the Emperor was gone. But humanity endured. If the Imperium could not survive this revelation, perhaps something new could emerge from its ashes. For days, I watched the death throes of terror. Orbital platforms turned their weapons on one another. The great space docks burned. The stream of supply ships dwindled and stopped. Billions would starve. But that was just the beginning. The warp itself responded to the collective trauma. Astropathic communications became distorted. Reports emerged of demonic manifestations in the heart of secure worlds. On the 5th day, we lost contact with key systems near Terror. The astropathic relays went silent. Long-range auspex detected massive energy spikes. Planetary-scale weapons discharges. On the 6th day, a fleet of ships approached Terror. Not Imperial vessels. Their profiles matched Eldari technology. They took up position in high orbit, observing the chaos. I considered communicating with them. What could I say? How could I justify that humanity had built its civilization on a lie? On the 7th day, I made my decision. The truth was loose. But perhaps something could be salvaged. If the Emperor was not a god, what was he? What power had sustained the Astronomicon? The answers might hold hope for humanity's survival. I gave Captain Horst our destination. Mars. If anyone had records of what the Emperor truly was, it would be the Adeptus Mechanicus. In their civil war, their archives might be accessible. Our navigator, a woman named Eliana, looked troubled. The warp is turbulent, my lord. The Astronomicon flickers. I cannot guarantee safe passage, even to Mars. Do what you can, I told her. The knowledge we seek may be humanity's only hope. As we broke orbit, I took one last look at Terror. The birthplace of humanity was burning. In my arrogance, my dedication to truth, I had done what countless enemies had failed to do across 10 millennia. I had struck at the heart of human faith and found it fragile. The journey to Mars took nearly 2 weeks. The warp was turbulent. Our navigator emerged from each translation more strained. Something is changing in the warp, she whispered. Something vast is stirring. I felt it watching us. Not hostile, not yet. But aware. When we arrived, we found the red planet little better than Terror. The forged cities were at war. The sky was dark with smoke. Orbital platforms exchanged fire. Using my inquisitorial codes, I contacted Mugos Delphan Grus, an ancient tech priest who had once assisted me. He arranged for us to dock at Olympus Mons. Our shuttle was met by Mechanicus gunships. They escorted us through a debris field of shattered vessels and drifting bodies. The void around Mars was contested. We were met by a contingent of Skitarii. They escorted us through corridors littered with remains. Servitors continued their programmed tasks, stepping over bodies. The air smelled of copper and burnt plastic. At one junction, we found a group of tech priests dead, their augmetics scattered. A servitor swept the floor, smearing blood, oblivious. Mugos Grus received us in a librarium that served as his command center. His body was a masterpiece of mechanical augmentation. Little flesh was visible, save for a single gray eye. Mechadendrites interfaced with cogitators. Inquisitor Vale, he greeted me, his voice a synthesized monotone. You have created quite a disturbance. I seek knowledge, Mugos. About the Emperor. About what he truly was. Grus repeated, was. Not is. You have already made your determination. The evidence is irrefutable, I said. His psychic presence has been dissipating for millennia. What remains is not what the Imperium worshipped. The implications extend beyond faith, Grus said. They strike at the foundations of the Mechanicus. The Omnisia and the Emperor have been one. If one is gone, what does that mean for the machine god? That is partly why I have come, I said. Not just to learn what the Emperor was, but what remains. What humanity might preserve. Gruss made a static burst. A laugh. Preservation. Yes. That is the question that divides us. What is worth preserving? The physical form. The technologies. The knowledge that predates imperial doctrine. And where do you stand, Magos? His single eye fixed on me. I stand with knowledge. Inquisitor. The truth may burn down our civilization, but from its ashes, a more honest one might rise. If we survive. He gestured to a display. Red icons surrounded the forge city. The Moire faction gains ground daily. They believe the machine god exists independently. Others see this as an opportunity to establish a purely technological empire. And you? His mechadendrites writhed. I believe understanding must precede faith. We cannot decide what to believe until we know what is true. That is why I will grant you access to our archives. Not because I share your conclusions, but because I share your desire to know. He granted us access to a secure data vault deep beneath the city. While skirmishes raged above, we descended into the catacombs. The vault contained archives from the dark age of technology, preserved in ancient formats. The journey took us through layers of security. The Civil War had drawn away defenders. Gruss's authority granted us passage. We descended in an ancient elevator. The mechanism ground and protested. These archives predate the heresy, Gruss explained. Some predate the Great Crusade. They contain knowledge deemed too dangerous for general access. And you have access to them? I have access to the access protocols. Whether the systems recognize my authority remains to be seen. The elevator halted. We stepped into a vast chamber filled with data storage devices. Crystal matrices, hololithic arrays, strange alien constructs. This is the Librarium Omnis, Gruss said, his voice hushed. The All-Library. Here we preserve knowledge too valuable to lose but too dangerous to use. Fragments of STCs, xenotech analysis, records from the Dark Age. Documentation of the Emperor's early work with the Golden Throne. My acolyte Reth gasped. Magos, this is beyond priceless. The knowledge here could advance the Imperium by millennia. Or destroy what remains of it, Gruss replied. Knowledge is a tool. Its value depends on its use. For 3 days and nights, we sifted through the archives. Servitors aided us with search algorithms. The information was fragmented, corrupted, but we pieced together a picture. The being that became the Emperor was ancient, possibly the oldest human. A perpetual, effectively immortal. But more significant was his psychic power. Unmatched in human history. One fragment, a journal from the Age of Strife, provided a glimpse. I have walked among humanity for millennia, guiding when I could, observing when I must. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have witnessed the birth of religions and their corruption. The time for subtle guidance has passed. The warp grows turbulent. If humanity is to survive, it must be united. Not under faith but reason. Not superstition but understanding. The project beneath the palace must be completed. The human webway will free us from warp travel. This is my gift. The true path to our ascension. The Golden Throne was a device of incredible complexity. A life support system, a psychic amplifier, a seal upon the human webway. When the Emperor was wounded by Horus, the throne became his prison, keeping his physical form alive while his essence dissolved. Technical schematics showed a conduit between real space and the warp, designed to channel psychic energy, but also a cage, meant to prevent something from entering or leaving. These specifications are incomplete, Reth said. Deliberately obscured. The throne was never meant to be permanent. A stopgap until something else was completed. The human webway, I suggested. Reth nodded. Possibly. What's clear is the Golden Throne is not operating as intended. It's been modified over millennia. Most shocking was the evidence that the Emperor never claimed divinity. The imperial cult developed after his internment. A political tool. His original vision was a secular empire. free from religion and the warp entities that fed on belief. We found records of the early Imperium, the imperial truth, the rejection of religion, the emphasis on reason and human potential. The Emperor had opposed his own worship. He saw it as a dangerous regression. The irony was suffocating. The greatest lie was built upon his greatest defeat. He witnessed the perversion of his vision. I sat amid the data stacks, feeling a profound loss. Not just for my faith, but for the vision that had been lost. Cain found me. "What will you do with this knowledge, my lord?" "What can be done, Cain? The damage is wrought. Adding this would only deepen the wounds." "Perhaps," he said. "Or perhaps it would offer a new path." The Emperor sought to free humanity from religion. That vision was lost. But it need not remain lost. Could his vision be reclaimed? Could humanity rebuild around reason rather than dogma? It seemed impossible. On the fourth day, battle sounds drew closer. Mugos Grus contacted us via Vox. "Inquisitor Vale, you must leave. The Forge City has fallen to the Moire faction. They seek the destruction of these records. Your presence accelerates their assault." "We have only just begun," I argued. "Take what data you have collected. I have prepared a ship. The knowledge must survive, even if we do not." We gathered what records we could, downloading them into portable data crystals. My retinue, Malia, 2 acolytes, a combat servitor, prepared to escape. As we made our way back, battle sounds grew louder. Phosphor weapons. Explosives. The elevator was dead. We climbed emergency ladders. A climb of nearly a kilometer in darkness. Halfway up, the elevator car above came loose. It plummeted past us, crashing below. "They're destroying the archives," Reth said, horrified. "Burying the knowledge rather than let it contradict their beliefs." We emerged into chaos. The upper levels were in flames. Skitarii fought Skitarii. Servitors continued their tasks amid destruction. We ran for the landing platforms. Twice we fought. My acolytes cut down rogue tech priests. The combat servitor moved with precision. The ship was there. A small Mechanicus transport. Engines cycling. As we sprinted across the platform, Malia stumbled. I turned back. A phosphor round struck her chest. She burst into white-hot flame. The data crystal she carried melted to slag. "My lord, we must go now," Cain shouted, pulling me. I ran with him. We reached the ship. Airborne within moments. Anti-aircraft fire tracked us. Through the viewport, I saw the Forge City burning. Centuries of knowledge going up in flames. As we broke atmosphere, I allowed myself grief for Malia. Another casualty. The void around Mars was a battlefield. Rival Forge cities exchanged fire. We wove through the conflict. Our small size and speed were our advantages. Once clear, we faced a new problem. Where to go? Terror was in flames. Mars was consumed. Reports suggested similar conflicts everywhere. The Astronomicon flickered erratically. Warp travel was dangerous. We're offered sanctuary to the man who shattered the Imperium. I chose the fortress monastery of the Grey Knights on Titan. They were unique. Created to combat chaos. Their faith was not in the Emperor's divinity, but in humanity's need for protection. If anyone would hear my findings with rationality, it would be them. Our navigator was doubtful. The warp grows more turbulent. Without the Astronomicon, even a journey within the system is dangerous. We have no choice, I told her. The knowledge we carry is too important. The journey to Titan was fraught. Warp storms intensified. Without the Astronomicon, navigation was nearly impossible. Our transport had minimal warp capability. We made a series of short, dangerous jumps. During one jump, we lost contact with my acolyte, Jarek. When we returned to real space, only a smear of organic matter remained. The navigator emerged more haggard. There is something in the warp. Vast and golden. I cannot tell if it hunts us or guides us. But it is aware. in a way no warp predator has ever been. Her words chilled me. Could the Emperor's consciousness still exist in the Imperium? By the time we reached Titan, our ship was barely functional. The crew, myself, my last acolyte Kel, and the combat servitor, its organic components rotting. Titan loomed, a gray orb wreathed in Saturn's storms. I transmitted my codes. We received clearance to approach. We descended. The monastery was a massive structure of dark adamantine and marble. Gun emplacements tracked us. Servo skulls scanned us. We were met by Grey Knights in Terminator armor. They escorted us to a secure chamber deep within. The corridors were lined with trophies from battles against chaos. Demon weapons in stasis fields. Banners from traitor legions. Severed heads of terrible creatures. Absolute order prevailed. No panic. The Grey Knights moved with purpose. As if the revelation had not touched them. I was brought before Grandmaster Valdar Oricon. He wore simple Terminator armor, distinguished by a red-hooded cape. Inquisitor Vale, he greeted me, his voice deep. Your discovery has reached even here. You know, we have our ways of perceiving disturbances. The psychic shockwave of collapsed faith has been felt by every battle brother with psychic sensitivity. Then you understand the implications. Perhaps better than you. The Emperor's divinity has never been our chapter's foundation. We were created to stand against the ruinous powers. That duty remains unchanged. His words stunned me. You do not worship the Emperor as a god? We honor him as our creator. The greatest psyker humanity has produced. The being whose sacrifice held chaos at bay. But worship? No. We have always known too much about the warp to mistake any being for a true deity. But the Imperium is tearing itself apart, I argued. Without belief in the Emperor's protection, without the Astronomicon, civilization will collapse. Perhaps, Oricon said. Or perhaps something new will emerge. More honest, more resilient. He rose and moved to a viewport. What concerns me more is the potential rise of true gods. As faith in the Emperor collapses, humans will seek new objects of worship. The ruinous powers stand ready. I felt a chill. I had given little thought to the long-term implications for humanity's soul. Already, we have reports of increased cult activity. The barriers between real space and the warp grow thin. Demonic incursions are more frequent, more powerful. Then what is to be done? I asked. How does humanity survive? That is the question we have gathered to address. You are not the only one to seek refuge here. Representatives from various imperial organizations have come. The Inquisition, the Administratum, even elements of the ecclesiarchy who value survival over doctrine. He led me from the chamber. We passed Grey Knights preparing for war. Sparring, meditating, reinforcing armor. The chapter prepares for war, I observed. Oricon nodded. War like none we have faced. Not on a single front, but across the entire Imperium. Against chaos, emboldened by humanity's crisis of faith. We entered a circular chamber with a round black marble table. Seated were figures representing imperial leadership. Inquisitors, including Lord Inquisitor Vaughn. Administratum representatives. Ecclesiarchy. Atek Mugos. Oricon indicated a seat. Join us, Inquisitor Vale. You have earned your place. As I sat, I felt their gazes. Hostile, curious, burdened. Discussions lasted for days. Reports flowed in. The Imperium was fracturing. The Astronomicon's failure stranded ships. Planetary governors declared independence. Military commanders crowned themselves kings. Chaos cults swelled their ranks. The Adeptus Mechanicus civil war spread. Some factions sought a new machine god. Others turned to the worship of the Void Dragon. But there were glimmers of resistance. Space Marine chapters established defensive perimeters. Imperial Guard regiments stood firm. Inquisitorial conclaves formed alliances. Humanity was not willing to go quietly. On the third day, Oricon called for silence. We have spent enough time diagnosing the disease. Now we must prescribe the cure. Lord Inquisitor Vaughn spoke first. The truth cannot be unknown. Any attempt to deny it will be seen as further deception. We must acknowledge the Emperor's condition. Replace faith in the Emperor with what? Demanded Cardinal Olga Churino. Faith has held the Imperium together for 10,000 years. Without it, what remains? Faith in humanity itself, I suggested. All eyes turned to me. The Emperor represented the pinnacle of human potential. If he was not a god, he was the greatest human. One who sacrificed everything to protect our species. We have worshipped a being who rejected worship, whose vision was a secular empire united by reason. Perhaps in losing our false god, we can reclaim that vision. The Tech Muggos, Xerxes Hal of the Logos Historic Verita, nodded. The data supports this. The Emperor sought to free humanity from religion, to elevate our species through science and reason. Pretty words, Cardinal Churino scoffed. But you cannot replace 10,000 years of faith with reason overnight. The masses require something to believe in. Then let them believe in the truth, Oricon said quietly. The universe is more terrible and wonderful than imperial doctrine allowed. The warp is real. The beings within it are real. The threat is real. But so is human resilience, ingenuity, courage. He placed his hands on the table. I propose a new coalition. Not to restore the Imperium, that is impossible, but to preserve what can be saved. To establish strongholds of human civilization. To gather knowledge, resources, defenders. Who would lead this coalition? Vaughn asked. Without the Emperor, who has the authority? No single individual, Oricon replied. A council. Representatives of organizations committed to humanity's survival. The Space Marines, loyal elements of the Guard, rational factions of the Mechanicus, the Inquisition, the Ecclesiarchy. The Ecclesiarchy? Churino asked, her voice tight. Those willing to adapt their teachings. Faith can be a force for good when not built on lies. The Emperor may not have been a god, but his sacrifice was real. His struggle continues. There is still a legacy worth honoring. Discussions grew practical. Plans for evacuating terror. Lists of worlds for new centers of governance. The Grey Knights offered Titan as a temporary headquarters. I found myself drawn to reports of unusual warp phenomena. Astropaths reported visions of a golden light. Navigators spoke of new currents. Space Marine librarians shared dreams of a presence neither human nor demon. During a recess, I approached a Grey Knight's librarian, Hyperion. His psychic might was legendary. You have questions about the warp, he said. About what is happening since your discovery. I nodded. There are reports of something moving. Something new, or something old changing. It is both new and ancient, Hyperion said. The being you knew as the Emperor has been dissipating. But that energy has not been destroyed. It has been transformed. Into what? That is the question. When a human dies, their soul passes into the warp. It may be consumed or dissolve. But the Emperor was no ordinary human. His power was vast. For 10,000 years, he has been the focus of worship for trillions. You're suggesting he has become a warp entity. A god in fact. It is a possibility. The warp is shaped by consciousness. The Emperor may have rejected divinity in life, but in death, the collective belief of humanity may have transformed him. As the council reconvened, I dwelled on his words. Could the Emperor have become a god through the devotion he opposed? As we adjourned, I stood with Oricon at the viewport. Saturn's rings shone. Do you believe it can work? I asked. This coalition? Can humanity survive without the Imperium? The Imperium is not humanity, he replied. It is a political arrangement. Humanity existed before it, and may exist after. We have survived worse cataclysms. The age of strife. We emerged. Not unchanged, not unscarred, but we survived. We adapted. He turned to me. You have carried a heavy burden. The weight of truth is not easily borne. I laughed bitterly. I destroyed the Imperium. Trillions may die because of me. No, Oricon said firmly. You did not destroy the Imperium. You exposed the rot that had been consuming it. A civilization built on a lie cannot stand forever. Better it fall now when something can be salvaged. His words offered little comfort, but they gave me purpose. If I was the instrument of downfall, I could be an architect of what came next. Not redemption, but atonement. In the days that followed, I threw myself into the Council's work. My knowledge of inquisitorial strongholds and hidden caches proved valuable. My contacts helped identify receptive worlds. One evening, I was visited by a gray knight I had not met. He wore a simple robe. A psychic hood marked him as a librarian. Inquisitor Vale, he greeted me, his voice gentle. I am Epistolary the Los. I have something to share that may provide comfort. Comfort is in short supply, but I welcome it. I have been monitoring the warp since the revelation. The psychic shockwave has created turbulence. But within it, patterns are emerging. New currents. Similar to what our navigator reported, I said. The Los nodded. The psychic energy once concentrated in the Emperor's form has dispersed. But it has not been destroyed. It is coalescing into a new form, drawing to itself the psychic resonance of human faith. The death of the God Emperor may be giving birth to an Emperor God. Not a corpse worshipped as divine, but a true warp entity, born from collective faith and will. An entity that, unlike the Chaos Gods, does not feed on fear or rage, but on hope, courage, determination. The implications were staggering. Then his consciousness still exists, still watches over humanity. That is our belief. But do not mistake this for a continuation of the imperial cult. This entity is not the Emperor as he was. It is something new, shaped by his consciousness and 10,000 years of human belief. It may carry his memories, his will, but it has been transformed in ways we cannot comprehend. 2 weeks after my arrival, an urgent report interrupted us. A massive warp storm had engulfed Terror, cutting it off completely. Astropathic communications told of demonic incursions. The Imperial Palace under siege. The Grey Knights prepared for deployment. A full brotherhood. Their mission, not to save Terror, impossible, but to recover relics and personnel before it fell. I requested to accompany them. Oricon denied it. Your knowledge is too valuable. There is another task for you. To be an emissary to loyal worlds. To explain the truth and extend the coalition's offer. Preparations were swift. I was provided with a modified inquisitorial vessel. A squad of Grey Knights, led by Brother Captain Gar, would accompany me. Astropaths, navigators, tech priests. Before the Grey Knights departed, Oricon shared a theory from our Mars data analysis. The Emperor's consciousness is not truly gone. The psychic energy has been absorbed into the warp. Not destroyed, but transformed. Into what? I asked. That is the question. The warp is a reflection of collective consciousness. For 10,000 years, trillions have directed faith toward the Emperor. That energy had to become something. You're suggesting he has become a true warp entity. A god. Oricon nodded. It might explain phenomena we have observed. Battle Brothers report visions of a golden light that burns away corruption. Some claim to hear a voice. If true, I said slowly, the irony is absolute. The Emperor who rejected godhood may have attained it in death through the worship he opposed. The universe is seldom lacking in irony, Oricon said. If the Emperor has become a warp deity, he is unlike any other. Born not of a single emotion, but of humanity's collective will to survive, to endure. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Keep that in mind as you travel. The truth you bear is devastating. But this might offer hope. Not false hope of divine protection, but hope that our collective will has power. That humanity, united in purpose, might forge its own destiny. The Grey Knights departed. I watched their ships vanish into the Imperium. 3 days later, I departed aboard the Veritas. With me traveled coalition representatives. Our first destination, Hydrofor, an Imperial Navy stronghold that maintained loyalty to the idea of the Imperium. As we entered the warp, I stood in the observation bay. Without the Astronomicon, navigation was treacherous. But our navigator, Elindra from House Belisarius, assured us. "The warp has changed," she said. "Not as one might expect. There are new currents, new patterns. Something is being born, Inquisitor. Something that has never existed. Can you sense it? This new presence?" "Not directly, but I see its effects. Turbulent areas are now calm. Predators flee from something they fear more than hunger. What could demons fear? Extinction. The concept of their unbeing. The warp is thought given form. If enough humans believe in a power that can unmake the ruinous powers, that belief becomes a weapon." As we journeyed, I reflected on the irony. The Emperor, who sought to free humanity from religion, became the focus of its greatest religion. And now that faith might be transforming him into a warp god. But perhaps this entity was different. Not a parasite, but a symbiote. Not a tyrant, but a creation of humanity's desire for protection. In that possibility lay a slender hope. Not restoration, but rebirth. Something that honored the Emperor's vision while acknowledging humanity's need. Our journey took us through impossible regions. Our navigator found paths where none should exist. Demonic entities drew near, then retreated when something golden appeared. "It guides us," Elindra whispered. "It shields us. Whatever it is, it wants us to succeed." Epistolary Thalos's words returned. An Emperor God. Born from collective faith and will. A warp entity that feeds on hope, not fear. Could it exist? And if so, what did it mean? As the Veritas carried us toward the first of many worlds, I offered a prayer. Not to the God Emperor, but to whatever remained of the man. To the psychic echo of his will. "Guide us," I whispered into the madness. "Not as our master, but as our creation. Show us how to survive." And somewhere in the Imperium, I heard an answer. Not in words, but in a sudden sense of purpose. The path ahead would be long and dangerous. The galaxy would burn. Countless lives would be lost. But humanity would endure. Changed, scarred, reduced. But it would survive. And in that survival lay the seed of rebirth. A new understanding of our place in the universe. The Emperor was dead. Long live humanity.